I started the thing.
It's 8 o'clock?
Yeah. All right, baby.
I can look at my glasses. You can't see.
All right, midterm review is live. If you guys have questions or concerns, post them over here in the chat box, the live chat box, and I will answer those questions. I'll also check Classroom to see if you have comments there, comments or questions. All right. All right, I see there are a bunch of people watching or a few people watching. If you guys have questions or concerns, post your questions or concerns up now, and I will start answering your questions. Otherwise, it'll be really awkward to just sit here for a little while and do nothing. All right, you got to post. You guys should be able to see a chat on the right-hand side of your screen, I think. Post your questions in that chat area, and we will be good to go. But I don't have anything really to add until you guys start asking questions. Oh, great. Great. Sounds good, Ryan. Thank you. On the bed, baby? Oh, we're going underneath the chair. Come here. Oh, I know. Good night, baby. I'll see you in the morning tomorrow. Good night. I know. Say good night.
Love you.
Babylonians. Good question. So you should know that Babylon and Babylonians existed in Mesopotamia. You guys actually labeled the city of Babylon on your map in the Google Maps part when we did that map earlier in the school year. Put a map. Let's put a map of Babylon here. Probably the most important thing that you'll have to remember about Babylon and the people of the city-state of Babylon is Hammurabi. Hammurabi was a king that ruled over Babylon and Babylonian culture and their civilization at its height. And one of the things that made Babylon so great under Hammurabi is that he himself wrote, as far as we know, the first set of written or codified laws in history. So this is a map of Sumer, or excuse me, of Mesopotamia. The Euphrates River branches down into here, and the Tigris River is down the bottom. Or nope, Tigris at the top, Euphrates down here at the bottom. Excuse me. Probably the most important thing to remember is his Hammurabi and Hammurabi's code. Generally speaking, people remember the laws as being very, very harsh. Like the most famous particular part of Hammurabi's code is if you knock out someone's eye, the punishment will be having your own eye knocked out. It's the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, saying that saying comes from Hammurabi's code. Hammurabi's code wasn't all about that, though. It dealt with a lot of family issues and a lot of civil issues. Like if builders didn't build strong houses, there were punishments for it. If people took crops, there were punishments for it. But it also showed that there was a strict or decent amount of class division inside of Babylonian society, right? If someone from an upper class hurt someone from a lower class, the punishment wouldn't be the same if the crime had been committed by a peasant to an upper class person. So that's Babylon. That's probably the things you'll probably have to most remember. It's also famous Hammurabi built one of the wonders of the ancient world. The Hanging Gardens. We don't know exactly what the Hanging Gardens look like because there's no real pictures of it, but there are artist depictions of Hanging Gardens. You can see those here. If you've ever been to the Greenway in New York City, I think it's called the Greenway. Let me double check its name. Yeah. It's supposed to be, I think that it's the Greenway in New York City. It's an old subway line that's elevated in the lower east or lower west side of New York City. And that's sort of a reasonable approximation of what the Hanging Gardens would have looked like. This is the Greenway in New York City. Same kind of deal. Plants in an urban environment, urban area, aesthetically pleasing. But this is not the Hanging Gardens. I'm going to delete it in a minute, but that's kind of what it probably would have looked like, something like that, minus all the industrialization that we have today. So let's get rid of that. What other questions are there? Let's see. Do I know what the SE topic is? I do. I know, and I gave you guys a list of different topics. I have a friend who's on our class. Yeah, of course. Whoever this is, anyone can join the stream as long as you give them the link. I think a good definition for the Indus River Valley Nisa. That's a good question.
loud?
Yes.
Turn it on when you're done.
Will do. I'll put it on. I suppose that this is probably the best definition for it, Nisa, just as in terms of the definition for Indus River Valley. It was one of the first 4 world civilizations. Historians and archaeologists think it may have started to develop around the same time, or maybe even a little bit before Mesopotamia. In terms of calories per acre, it was certainly the most or greatest civilization in that terms, like lots of great land for farming, very regular flooding. It was a great place to develop and build large cities and to have large scale agriculture and farming necessary to support early civilizations. When you think about the Indus River Valley, I mean, we don't know a great deal of it, number one, about it as historians. The writing for the Indus River Valley is almost, I mean, no one has any idea really what it is. It's a bunch of pictographs. We looked at it in class. None of that stuff is good. Indus script. Let's see, pull up this website because this is good. We don't know all that much about the Indus River Valley script and Indus River Valley writing. We do know that it was they did have a highly advanced economy because there was a decent amount of trade that took place between the Indus River Valley and Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia would have been, if we expanded this map to the west, it would have been over here in this general region. So trading did take place between Mesopotamia and the Indus River Valley. That tells us that they were a pretty advanced civilization with a highly developed economy. The most significant thing people remember about the Indus River Valley, though, is its cities. Everything we know from the Indus River Valley comes from archaeology and the sites that have been discovered. Harappa is one of those cities. It's in present-day Pakistan. And what archaeologists and historians have excavated are huge cities with streets and buildings that are organized in a grid pattern, much like modern-day cities are today, with an excellent plumbing system and giant baths that signify to us that cleanliness was probably very, very important to the people of the Indus River Valley. But again, there's just not a bunch that we know about them because no written records are kept. Now, when they did start to decline, there are a couple different reasons why historians think they declined, most likely either foreign invasions or natural disasters. But as they did decline, another group came into the Indus River Valley over the mountains from the northwest. Those are the Aryan people. The Aryan people are not the same as Adolf Hitler's Aryan people. They're much different. They were more or less nomadic herders and herders from Central Asia that came over the Hindu Kush Mountains and began to settle in the Indus River Valley, and then over here in the Ganges River Valley as well. And what developed after this is sort of the ancient beginnings of what is today modern India and Pakistan. This is at this point in time in history, you start to see Hinduism develop as the culture and belief systems of the people of the Indus River Valley began to mix with the Aryan people that came from the Northwest. And that's where we started to get to Hinduism. Now, India has a very diverse landscape. There's a desert in this region, for example, lots of rivers, mountain ranges that broke up India. Down here in the south, you have a plateau, and then you have the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. Not very good farmland in here, not all of it at least. And as a result, India is a pretty fragmented civilization, not centrally organized or governed a lot like the Greeks until about 500, 400 BCE, when some families and kingdoms in the area, rulers tried to take over and conquer the region. Parminder, your midterm is tomorrow. Yeah. All right, so that's the Indus River Valley. That's basically everything you would have to know about just its basic history. Text box here. No, it's fine. Yeah. All right, other questions? A definition for Hellenistic culture is just going to simply be, those are children's toys. Ignore those.
Can you kick the ball?
That noise will stop soon, I promise. Maybe. It stops eventually. That's it. It's done now. So talking about Hellenistic culture, you have to talk about Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great ruled basically left what his father had left over in Macedonia and ancient Greece, starting in I do not recall all of a sudden when he exactly aired. He served as king from 336 to 323 BCE. Now, we remember from class that Alexander's father, Philip, was the king of Macedonia. Macedonia was a region to the northern, a little bit to the east of what was Greece. He developed new fighting tactics that relied on small groups of soldiers and using a giant, working together, but also using a giant spear. What is this here? Why do we? I don't want to do that. Change my mind. The fighting regimen was called a phalanx. Yeah. Alexander the Great, his dad developed this fighting strategy or tactic where foot soldiers would work together in small groups, relatively small groups. You line up kind of in an alternating fashion in lines and groups, and they would use these giant long spears. They were 18 feet long, I think, sarissas they were called, or sarissas. And in wide open territories, their enemies, they looked like perfect targets to come in and attack. Now, when you actually tried to attack them and they dropped their spears, the phalanx was borderline it was difficult to penetrate. Now, while the phalanx took on, and large numbers of them, large groups of phalanxes, took on the brunt of the enemy's approaches or offensive attacks. Alexander the Great's cavalry, people who rode on horses, came around on the flanks and kind of attacked their opponents, catching them off guard oftentimes, and allowing them to defeat their enemies. As a result of this kind of new strategy, Alexander the Great's army was able to, after Philip his father, Philip II, had taken over the Greek city-states, being in here, was able to advance his army out east and take over parts of Egypt, what at the time was the Persian Empire, and even parts of India. And that's what Hellenistic culture is. It's this, because after Alexander the Great died, these regions were all basically connected, as Greek people kind of followed him as Alexander the Great conquered territories in these regions. Greek people more or less followed him out, and there was an increase in trade, and cultural diffusion and transfer of ideas between the people that lived in Greece and all of these other regions as well. Egypt, Persia, Persian Empire being in here, and India. And that's what Hellenistic culture is. And that's Hellenistic culture. It's basically the combination of cultures that Alexander the Great conquered and took over as the leader of Macedonians. All right, other questions. Let's see. The essay is not a DVQ. Let me scroll back up here. I'm way past this. Hellenistic culture. What do you have to know about Siddhartha Gautama? Siddhartha Gautama was the founder of Buddhism. So you really don't need to know all that much about him so much. You really do need to know the key ideas and beliefs of Buddhism. All right. So Siddhartha Gautama founded Buddhism. We know the story of him as a young adult. He left his palace for the first time. He found suffering, 3 different people suffering in 3 different ways. He was greatly surprised by that and ultimately decided it was time, or it was motivated to find a way to end suffering. And he spent the rest of his life trying to find a way to end human suffering. And his teachings are basically the basis of Buddhism. So if you're a Buddhist, you believe in, first of all, you have to acknowledge 4 basic ideas that set up the fundamentals of the religion. The first one is you have to know that there is suffering in the world. 2, so in the 4 Noble Truths, you're basically acknowledging that suffering exists, that suffering is caused by human desire or craving, looking for things outside of yourself to make people happy. That there is a way to end suffering, and therefore end desire and then to end suffering. And the way to do that is to follow the Eightfold Path. And then there are just 8 basic things that Buddhists are supposed to do. Very loosely translated, you have to have right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and then to concentrate and think about all of the way to live your life through meditation. Now, you should also know a specific place or individual who was greatly impacted by the religion or following the belief system. One specific person that you should know is the Emperor Ashoka. I mentioned before that after the Indus Valley collapsed, that there was a migration of people from the northwestern part, or not northwestern. It was from Central Asia, northwest of India, that migrated into this region and started to mix with the people that were living in the Indus River Valley and began settling in the other river valleys in the northern plains in India. And ultimately, as a result of geographical barriers and diversity in India, or geographical diversity in India, that it was, as a region, largely fragmented. Lots of different people, rulers, local rulers and leaders ruled over India, never really uniting it under a single government. And that's until the Mauryan family and Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka came from the Chandragupta family, or the Mauryan family. His grandfather or father was Chandragupta Maurya, and he was responsible for conquering lots of India and taking over it and ruling it as a single authority in India. That's fine. Let's get a map of it. And Ashoka and his predecessors actually used violence in the army to conquer all of this territory and rule people initially. After one particular battle, though, the last battle that Ashoka fought, really, he decided that he did not like the way that he was living his life and wanted to become a devout Buddhist. So he started to live his life as an individual, as a more devout Buddhist, practicing, acknowledging the Four Noble Truths and following the Eightfold Path. And part of following the Eightfold Path for him was spreading the messages of Buddhism to everyone in his empire. and he spread his ideas. And Ashoka, kind of adhering to those ideals, encouraged tolerance and acceptance of all people so that people inside of his empire would get along. So that is, Nisa, that's like what you need to know about Buddhism and Siddhartha. The midterm is tomorrow. We said that. We did Hellenistic Culture. Who is that? Rahit. That is the person who founded Buddhism. Harleen, could you go over the stuff for the essay? What stuff, Harleen, like how to write introduction paragraphs, or did you want to go over the actual content of the essay? I can't tell you that. What do you have to know about the Peloponnesian Wars, Liz? That Sparta beat Athens, basically. That's it. And then Alexander the Great beat both of them later. How long does the essay need to be? The essay needs to be long enough to address all parts of the task and to have an introduction and conclusion. Most of the time, it's like 4 or 5 paragraphs in total. Persians and the Persian War. Which Persian War? I think you're probably talking about the Persian attempts to invade Greece. Ultimately, that's definitely the Persian Wars you're talking about. The Persians tried to invade Greece as they had taken over, and the Persians were from Central Asia, present-day Iran, and they had taken over Mesopotamia and had expanded towards the west. They tried to invade. The next place to take over and moving west was going to be Greece. The Greek city-states, which had previously really been fighting each other for most of their history, been in conflict and competition with each other, united together to fight off and defend the Persians. That's all you need to know for the Persians. Malia tells Michael that the Huns are the people on the horses 24/7. That is totally right. Liz, again, you've got 50 multiple choice questions and 1 thematic essay, not 205, although that's a good joke, Nisa. 40 multiple choice questions in an essay. That is right, 40 in an essay. Is the essay a DBQ? No, the essay is a thematic essay. No documents. Thank you, Nisa. Great, you guys are awesome. Fantastic job. Harleen, I'm not going to tell you the essay question. Can't tell you to do that. I told you the 4 topics you could be on. You should know geography, belief systems, the rise and fall of empires, and cultural and cultural diffusion. Stuff about India and China. So a lot of the India stuff we've gone over already. The Indus River Valley, some examples of the highly advanced cities were Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. This is Harappa right here. You can see sort of the grid pattern that it developed. No one's sure exactly why the Indus River Valley civilization declined and stopped existing as it did in its earliest years. I guess we could do some China stuff. Let me catch some other questions first and come back to this one. What do you need to actually know about the religion? So for each of the major religions we've talked about, you should know the key beliefs of the religion. Like, for example, the holy book of each religion, maybe a religious leader, and the basic ideas and teachings of the religion, monotheistic or polytheistic, that basic stuff. Then you should know a specific place that was impacted by the religion. So if you had to write an essay about Buddhism, you should write about Emperor Ashoka in India. If you were going to write about Hinduism, you'd have to talk about the caste system, karma, dharma, reincarnation, and how India, even still today, like the caste system decided every single part of a person's life in ancient India. You could talk about ancient India, not under necessarily a specific person, but really for most of its history after the Indus River Valley declined. Even today, people are impacted a great deal by the caste system, even though that a lot of the caste distinctions that used to exist thousands of years ago aren't allowed to exist by the law. People are still very much influenced by what their caste is in India, and it dictates not necessarily jobs and job opportunities, but definitely where you live and personal relationships. You should know Christianity, that it was founded by Jesus, that his teachings are in the New Testament, the Ten Commandments for Christianity, that a place that was impacted by Christianity was the Roman Empire. You could talk about specifically how Christianity became so popular. You could talk about how Constantine wanted to move the capital of Rome to Constantinople so that he could build a Christian empire over in the East. That would be a really good example. Judaism was founded by Abraham, as Michael just said. A lot of the same key beliefs as Christianity. Christianity actually comes from Judaism. We said Hinduism, we said Buddhism, Confucianism in China and Han China would be a good example of key beliefs of Confucianism, and then that it ultimately led to the creation of the civil service system in China. Essays about, although maybe you should listen to what I'm saying. Essay, oh my God, poor kid, it's not how you say it. You do not need to know the dates for each emperor. Polytheistic religion is one in which there are many gods that that worshippers believe in. Like Hinduism is considered a polytheistic religion. So is Greek. The Greek and Roman religions are considered polytheistic as well. Who's Mr. G? Believe in more than one God. Great answer. Oh, Mr. Singh, that's interesting. A good definition for the Nile River Nisa is just the civilization that gave birth to Egypt. Really, Egypt basically was a civilization that grew in the middle of the Sahara Desert, the largest desert on Earth, and it did so because of the Nile River provided fertile soil, water to drink, fertile soil for farming, and ultimately was one of the first places to develop farming in the history of the world. I didn't skip your question, Harleen. I'm not telling you guys what the essay is, but we've talked a lot about stuff that is definitely going to be on the essay. We have about 15 minutes left. All right, let me see here. Some stuff about China. Valley. All right. So there are a couple major rivers in China, but the Chinese civilization developed first around the Yellow River. The Yellow River is this river here in the north, up in this region here. And this is right about where Chinese civilization first started to grow. And the reason that the Yellow River is called the Yellow River is because it is quite literally yellow. All right. It's yellow because in the far western region where the river begins, way over here, this very fine yellow silt powder called loess blows into the river and causes it to overflow farther down in this region here. All right. Now, people that settle around, now, of course, the positives to the river overflowing are that it left very rich mineral rich and fertile soil along the banks, which was great for farming. And that's why Chinese civilization began in this region here. Now, unfortunately, the river flooded very irregularly. Like, it was not predictable because it didn't flood as a result of anything that you could predict. Like, it was just a lot of silt blew into the river and then the river overflowed. That was a problem because it being so unpredictable, it could flood very a great deal, very much, very high, and that would cause crops to be wiped out and destroyed from flooding, homes to be wiped out and destroyed, could cause lots of people to die or get hurt. And China as a government began to exist, or China as like an organized civilization began to exist when the first Chinese dynasty, and this isn't totally 100% historically verified, the first Chinese dynasty began to organize irrigation efforts so that the flooding would not wreak so much havoc on the people living in the region. All right. First dynasty allegedly is called the Xia dynasty, that allegedly built that first, led those first irrigation drives so that nothing would overflow in, or the river's flooding wouldn't be so drastic and devastating. Now, early Chinese history, from dynasties in China's history that had power and control were the Xia dynasty, the Shang dynasty, and the Zhao dynasty. Each of those dynasties had feudalism as their kind of governing political and social force. Let's see what this one is here. No, this is not the right. That's not the right one. What do we got here? Is this the right one? That's not working either. That's not it. Oh, great. These are not helpful at all. So feudalism kind of works the same way in every single place. We're just going to rename some things here. So in China, the leader was called the emperor. There's no shogun. There's no daimos. Cross them out. Oh, this is a terrible pyramid. All right. Man, these are the worst feudalism pyramids. What's going on? All right. So this is important for you guys to listen to me here because I'm not going to spend the next 10 minutes trying to modify this pyramid for you guys. But feudalism in China works basically the same way as it did in Japan and in Europe. Just the titles of the different people were different. So in China, for example, there wasn't a king, but there was an emperor. There weren't nobles and religious leaders. They were vassals or upper landowners. And then most of the time below them, there were peasants. It wasn't a very highly organized feudal pyramid like this one has an extra group in between. There probably wasn't that in China. Now, again, because the king relies on these guys, the guys below him to rule large pieces of land, the king or the emperor requires everyone below him to be loyal. And as soon as one family decides they're not going to be loyal to the emperor, then you have a problem. And as a result, in China, because of this very weak system, civil war broke out. from 475 BCE to 221 BCE. That's 200 years of civil war and fighting in China as different families throughout China tried to fight and gain power so that they could be the top, have the most power and control the most land, right? The winners of this civil war were the Qin. When the Qin dynasty and Shi Huangdi took power, there was no more feudalism in China. So we can put a big giant X through this. Shi Huangdi himself ruled with complete and total authority. He had implemented, again, like Hammurabi, very strict rules with very harsh punishments so that everyone would listen to him, and then he could take out and eliminate anybody who was trying to oppose him. All right. Now, Shi Huangdi, or the Qin dynasty, actually didn't rule for all that long. Only about 20 years. After Shi Huangdi died, basically, the Qin dynasty lost a lot of power. He was the person who kept it in control. When he died, the next dynasty that took over was the Han dynasty. Under the Han dynasty, there was a golden age in China. The economy thrived. Also, China at this time actually developed paper to write things down on. Before that, they actually kept records on silk. Silk production increased, and trade, again, that led to major trade increases with the West. The Han Dynasty experienced a time where the borders of China expanded as well into the southern part of China, especially. So there was more land. Which was started to be built under the Qin dynasty was built larger to keep out invaders from the north. So in general, the Han dynasty is considered the first golden age in Chinese history because of those major achievements and others. Other questions you guys have? Yes, the Ganges River and the Indus River are the two rivers in India. The Yellow River is not part of India. It is part of China. Justinian's Code and some achievements. Justinian's Code is the legal code that Justinian created. That's an awesome number one big time achievement. The other achievements of Justinian are going to be that he expanded the size of the Byzantine Empire to just the Justinian's Code. I'm sorry, I got distracted by other questions. Justinian's Code, as you said before, a legal code that basically became the basis of many other legal codes in the West after the Byzantine Empire declined. He expanded the empire to take over a lot of territories that had been lost in the western part of Europe that had previously been part of the Roman Empire, parts of Italy, parts of Spain, and parts of northern Africa. And then after the city was kind of destroyed after the Nika riots and revolts, he had a lot of the city rebuilt, like the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia, for example, was rebuilt to kind of recapture the glory and splendor of Rome in the East. That's the stuff you need to know about Justinian. The Yellow River is not part of India. It's part of China. Yeah, I said this already, but the two rivers in India, the big ones are the Indus and the Ganges. You do not have to turn in the review. You should just keep it as a reference. You should be there tomorrow. Let me double check to see what time the test is. The test is tomorrow at 8, so you should plan on arriving at the building at 7:30. Yep, pyramids and the pyramids of Giza, those are major achievements of Egypt. Let me see if I can think of some other things that you guys should probably know about. Make sure you guys know that prehistoric times, that the Paleolithic times before there was any writing, population tended to be small because there wasn't a lot of food. You know what different social scientists do, like archaeologists study artifacts, anthropologists study culture, political scientists study government, economists study scarcity. You should know the difference between primary and secondary sources. That probably the most important development in human history, maybe good or bad, was the development of farming and domesticating animals. That's the Neolithic Revolution that led to the growth of the four major civilizations we talked about. You should know cultural diffusion comes from lots of trade. You should know the different features of civilizations, the 8 features of civilizations, population centers, the development of art and architecture, that separate people and their social power and clout, the development of organized religions and belief systems, central government, job specialization, writing, and then public works. Again, we went over the major components of the belief systems. Those are all in your notes. The reason the first civilizations developed near river valleys, they developed near river valleys or in river valleys because they had fertile soil. That in like for most of the early civilizations in Mesopotamia and in Egypt and in India, the priests and religious leaders were most of the time the people who dominated the social structures. They were the leaders for the most part. All of the early civilizations developed writing, different writing, but all writing. The key book of Judaism, for example, is the Torah. For Christianity, it's the New Testament, the Holy Bible. In Confucianism, it's the Analects of Confucius. You should know the. Hold on a second. I'll let the dog in. She's crying outside. Hold on 1 second. The holy book of Hinduism is the Vedas. The holy book of, those are all the holy books. You should know the key geographic features of each of the major regions, mountain ranges, river valleys, deserts, etc., that influenced the first four major civilizations. Key beliefs of Hinduism include the caste system, reincarnation, karma, and dharma. We know that the caste system did not promote social mobility. Like in Hinduism, if you were born into a caste, that was the caste you were in for the rest of your life. There was no possibility for to elevate yourself in any way, shape, or form. We know that in China, we didn't mention how the different dynasties before rose and fell. Each of the different dynasties claimed, went through the dynastic cycle and claimed the mandate of heaven in order to rule and take over China and govern China. They basically, the dynasties said that the ancestors and gods had given them power to rule China. And that's why people followed them. China being geographically isolated led it to be ethnocentric. One of the big reason that Confucianism led to the civil service system and exams is Confucius encouraged everyone in society to know what their specific role in society was, and to act and perform that role the best way they could. You had to set rules of behavior and follow them very closely. One of the amazing achievements in ancient Athens was before it underwent a golden age under Pericles in ancient Athens, that the first direct democracy, where citizens could directly vote on rules and laws. Even though their direct democracy excluded lots of people, it was still the first one in which citizens could get together and vote on rules and laws for the city-state. The conflict between the Greek city-states of Athens and Sparta was the Peloponnesian Wars, won by Sparta. You should know the major Greek philosophers of the Greek Golden Ages: Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato were those Greek philosophers. We know that Alexander the Great's conquest led to the spread of Hellenistic culture. The Roman Empire prospered because it developed a lot of trade networks around the Mediterranean Sea, and because it used the Mediterranean Sea as a highway. We still have a lot of Greek and Roman culture that exists today. Not really culture in the United States, but there are some of their achievements, especially in laws and government planning, come from Rome. And I think that's really everything. A lot of things we've covered this school year. Again, it's really important that you should be able to think tonight, and you should know tomorrow. 2 golden ages, 2 belief systems, 2 geographic features, 2 examples of cultural diffusion, and then specific places that each of those impacted or you could discuss. So if you're talking about belief systems, for example, you should be able to talk about Hinduism's impact on India, or Buddhism's impact on the Ashoka and the Mauryan dynasty, or Confucianism in China, or Christianity under the Roman Empire, or any of those. Or you should be able to talk about mountains and deserts in China, or mountains and deserts in India, or rivers in any one of the four river valley civilizations would be really good to talk about. The Mediterranean Sea for Rome. You should be able to talk about the Golden Age of Athens, the Golden Age of the Gupta Empire, the Golden Age of the Han Dynasty. Any of those things, any and all of those things, you'd be able to write about tomorrow. You know, trust me, teachers understand that you have an hour and a half tomorrow to write an essay and do 40 multiple choice questions. And what we expect on that sort of test in an essay, we understand the expectations are for this sort of assignment are different for one that you would have to take home. Primary source NISA is a source that came from the time period that you're studying. That's primary and secondary sources. The Punic Wars, nothing really for tomorrow. The Punic Wars were Rome versus Carthage. The Romans won the wars, and basically at that point, defeating their main rival in the Mediterranean, were able to kind of establish a dominance in the region that allowed them to expand over the Mediterranean. You really just need to know that Julius Caesar was the first. I mean, it's silly. He's not considered the first emperor of Rome. His grandson Augustus is, but Julius Caesar was the first person to kind of, well, not the first, but the most famous person to take absolute power in Rome. Declared himself consul for life. I can tell you that the essay is going to be about, I told you, like, there are four big topics that you've reviewed a bunch this year over and over. Those four big topics are geography, belief systems, the rise and fall of great empires or leaders. Like you've talked about Alexander the Great and how Rome grew to be and expand in its power, and how Justinian grew and helped expand power. That's been a key focus, especially in the latter half of the first semester. And then we've talked about cultural and cultural diffusion a bunch. You should be able to talk about examples of that as well. So those four big things are where I think you should focus for your essay. That's geography, belief systems, rise and fall of great empires or leaders, and culture and cultural diffusion. I'm going to take like one more question. It's 15 minutes past my bedtime right now. Can you go over the essay topics more in depth and write them down in the slides? Well, Malia, you should know that there was a split in the church in Christianity, but you don't have to know all of the specifics behind it. Harleen, I'm not going to go through each of the major essay topics in great deal of depth. Like I promise you that in your notes, you have everything you could possibly use. Like if I were to open up, well, I know that not all your notes are completed because for a long time you didn't have your Chromebook. But what I can show you, go over here, classroom. Global 7 and Global 8, you guys have the same exact thing here, but if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can click on class notes, and you have everything you could possibly ever need for this school year in this section of notes. Oh, it looks like you don't. You should have all the key beliefs and everything like in these for your religions and belief systems. I know that I don't have these are the blank files for now. Yeah, Malia, just what the split is. No, I'm not going to open all your notes, Harleen. I promise you that I have covered everything that you're going to need to know for the essay tonight. Guaranteed. Hinduism is similar to Buddhism because they both believe in karma and reincarnation. All right, then. That's going to be it for me because it's late and I'm tired. I'm having a tough time saying all the words as well. I was bad tonight. My apologies for not speaking loudly and mumbling. Oh, but I hope the note file that's been posted is very helpful for you guys. All these things you guys are pretty clear on, though. I think there's nothing I can promise you that everything on the test we've covered this school year, that the questions on the test will look very familiar to you, and that that we have covered in depth, very, very great depth tonight and throughout the school year, the thing that will be covered on the essay tomorrow. At all, I'm going to be I have to teach the middle school until like 10:40. But you guys can do awesome on the essay. You'll do awesome on the test. If you have questions or concerns when the test is over, you can send me an email or post something on Google Classroom, and I'll make sure I get back to you right away. That's it, though. You guys have a great night. I totally loved hanging out with you all tonight, talking about social studies. Best day of the year. All right, how do I turn this thing off? Oh, that's it.